Hi, recap reporters here. Today I'm going to explain a sci-fi movie. Spoilers ahead, you have been warned. In the year 2035, technology advanced to the point where helper robots were commonplace in everyday life. To avoid trouble, the robots have been programmed with the 3 laws of robotics. A robot cannot harm or allow a human being to be harmed. Robots must obey human orders unless they conflict with the first law, and robots must protect their own existence unless it conflicts with the first or second law. However, Detective Spooner is stuck in his ways and despises robots, believing that they will cause harm to society regardless of the laws. He always wakes up in a bad mood after having a nightmare about a girl drowning in a car while a robot smashes the window next to him. Spooner is on his way to work one morning when he notices a robot fleeing with a purse. Spooner commands it to stop, thinking it's a robbery, but the robot ignores the order and Spooner begins chasing after it. When he finally receives, Spooner is surprised to discover that the robot had simply picked up the purse its owner had forgotten at home, which contained her inhaler, to deal with it. Spooner realizes it was a medical emergency as everyone around him condemns him for believing a robot could commit a crime. Later, at the police station, the other officers mock Spooner, and his boss, Bergen, chastises him for his paranoia. Bergen believes Spooner should not return to work so soon after his accident, but Spooner insists he is fine. Spooner receives a call about a case at that moment and rushes to the USR, the company that builds the robots. Dr. Lanning, one of the co-founders, was discovered dead, and since he fell from his lab, everyone assumes he took his own life. He left behind a hologram that expressly requests that Spooner take his case, but it can't provide more information unless the right questions are asked. Spooner is a friend of Lanning's and believes he would not have done this to himself, so he continues his investigation. Following that, he meets with Mr. Robertson, USR's CEO and another co-founder. Robertson is devastated by Lanning's death and has nothing but praise for the doctor. He also offers to assist the police in any way they may require. Spooner, on the other hand, acts like a jerk because he despises robots and annoys Robertson later before leaving. Spooner meets Susan, a robot psychologist who worked with Lanning, in the lift. Knew the doctor hadn't had any human contact in a long time, preferring the company of robots instead. Regardless, she does not believe he was the type to end things like that. When Spooner requests the surveillance footage, Susan explains that surveillance strips are located throughout the building and are linked to the USR's Central Operating Core, which is managed by an AI named Vicky. Spooner requests footage of Lanning's laboratory from Vicky, but the recording is corrupted, so Spooner visits the lab himself. Spooner is disgusted when he discovers a plethora of experimental models in the lab. To hear that they are working to make robots more human. On the desk is also a Hansel and Gretel book. Because the hole through which Lanning fell is quite large, Spooner attempts to do the same on the other window and barely scratches the safety glass, implying an elderly man like Lanning. It couldn't have been broken either. Spooner begins looking around, convinced that a robot killed Lanning, ignoring Susan's protests that this isn't possible. In the end, Spooner is proven right when he finds a robot hiding in a box of parts. The robot is an NS, the most recent model that is yet to be released, and it leaps out of the box to steal Susan's gun. It manages to ignore the order to deactivate and flee, but when Vicky closes the doors, the robot jumps out the window instead. Susan predicts that the robot will want to repair itself, so she and Spooner travel to the robotics factory, where thousands of NSs await programming completion. They are unable to respond. Spooner shoots one to get a reaction because their only knowledge is the 3 laws. Nothing happens, but just as he's about to fire another, a robot in the back peeks at him and starts running again. Spooner pursues it only to be hit by the robot and it wonders what happened. It runs out of the building exactly as it is. The cops are already waiting for it, and when it tries to escape by climbing, they catch it with a net. Later, at the station, Spooner bothers Bergen until he is granted 5 minutes with the robot because he is still convinced it did it. During the interrogation, the robot surprises everyone by revealing that it has a name, Sonny, and that it did not murder Lanning. It sought refuge in the lab after experiencing fear, and when Spooner, despite the fact that robots do not have emotions, Sonny claims that Lanning experimented with giving it emotions and dreams. Spooner believes that experiment went horribly wrong, leading Sonny to murder Lanning. This enrages Sonny, and it smashes its fits on the table. Sonny explains that Lanning became scared before his death and asked Sonny for a favor, so Sonny obeyed that order out of love for his creator. Unfortunately, Robertson and others interrupt the interrogation. His legal team, which defends the company and reminds cops that robots cannot be charged with murder. They'll decommission Sonny and classify the incident as an industrial accident. Later, Spooner and Bergen go out for a drink and Spooner can't stop thinking about why Robertson was more than willing to destroy an advanced robot like Sonny. He also wonders why Sonny did not kill him when he had the opportunity. Bergen points out that Spooner was the ideal candidate for the job because only he would have pursued a robot as a possible suspect, and Spooner realizes this. That's why Lanning specifically requested him, indicating that he's on the right track. Spooner goes to the doctor's abandoned estate to find out why Lanning was scared. A demolition robot is stationed outside, programmed to demolish the house the following day. Within the mansion, Spooner discovers the USR surveillance strips, a photograph of Lanning and Susan, and the doctor's ailing cat. The demolition robot suddenly activates and begins smashing through the walls, as if it is specifically targeting Spooner, who quickly grabs the cat and runs through the house. He jumps through the door after shooting at it and lands safely in a pool. A few moments later, Spooner arrives at Susan's and explains that Lanning's house looked as if no one had been there in weeks, implying that someone was watching the doctor and possibly holding him prisoner. In his laboratory, his current theory is that Lanning discovered a problem with the robots like Sonny and was silenced by Robertson. Susan still believes Spooner is paranoid and doesn't care about Lanning. He just wants to prove robots are evil. Spooner notices Susan has changed at that moment. He decides to leave because he has an NS at home, but first he shows Susan the picture he found to show how much he cares. The next morning, Spooner notices that old working robots are being gradually replaced by NSs, which concerns him. He is devastated when he visits his grandmother Gigi to leave the cat with her. To see she's gotten an NS to help her with her chores as well. Before he leaves, Gigi recalls Spooner as a child, leaving breadcrumbs everywhere, which reminds Spooner of the Hansel and Gretel book he saw. Following that, Spooner goes to the station and begins watching old Lanning recordings in order to follow the breadcrumbs the doctor may have left for him. Spooner believes Lanning's statement that robots will one day have dreams and keep secrets is a significant clue. Meanwhile, Susan prepares Sonny for decommissioning, which is scheduled for the following day at the USR. Sonny. Susan begins to doubt what she believes to be true when he shares that he's been dreaming and that he doesn't want to die. Spooner is in his car later when he asks Vicky for access to Lanning and Robertson's last 50 messages. Vicky does give him permission, but she also informs Robertson in secret because those were his orders. When Robertson notices Spooner is still probing the case, he issues new orders to deal with him. Spooner's car is suddenly surrounded by 2 trucks containing an army of NSs, who leap out to attack him. Spooner uses his gun and crazy driving to get rid of the robots, and when he manages to maneuver around the trucks, he causes them to collide. This causes his own car to spin out of control, and he crashes as well. While cleaning robots begin taking action immediately. Spooner emerges from his car, dizzy, from the disaster, only for his car to suddenly come after him. It was thrown by a still functioning robot, and it comes after Spooner again, starting a fierce hand-to-hand fight. Spooner uses his arm to shield himself after exchanging a few blows, and it is injured, revealing that it is a prosthetic. Now that the truth has been revealed, Spooner uses his metal arm to attack the robot, causing it to flee and dive into a fire. When the cops arrive, Spooner tells Bergen what happened, but Bergen doesn't believe him because he didn't see any trucks or robots in the tunnel. Spooner becomes so enraged that Bergen takes his place. Badge for the time being. Meanwhile, Susan discovers that Sonny has a thicker alloy than normal and isn't connected to Vicky, and when she examines its brain, she is astounded by what she finds. Spooner is at his flat, spraying his prosthetic with a special spray, when Susan walks in. She explains that Sonny has 2 brains, and the second one allows it to ignore the first one's 3 laws. They agree to collaborate, but Spooner must first change in order for Susan to notice the scars that indicate he is wearing a robotic prosthetic. This is how Spooner met Lanning, who saved his life by donating an arm, a lung, and several ribs. Then Spooner tells the entire story of his accident, in which a driver fell asleep at the wheel and his semi-truck collided with Spooner's and a family car, sending them into the river. The father died immediately, but the daughter became trapped. Spooner thought no one would survive, but then a robot appeared, showed up and chose to assist him rather than the girl, as Spooner had requested. It turns out that the robot calculated that Spooner had a better chance of survival than the girl, which is why it chose the girl. This is why Spooner despises robots. Math should not decide who lives or dies. That's far too cold. A child should always be prioritized. Following that, Spooner and Susan travel to the USR, where Susan wonders why Lanning built a robot that can defy the rules he wrote himself, and Spooner mentions Hansel and Gretel. He believes Lanning was being watched and couldn't escape. Give Spooner direct messages, so he leaves crumbs like the kids in the book, implying he gave Sonny dreams to keep his secrets. Later at the lab, the duo asks Sonny about its dreams, and Sonny draws a picture of a man standing on a hill near a broken bridge, freeing slave robots. Susan believes the man is Sonny, but the robot believes it is Spooner and gives him the drawing. Guards arrive at that moment and take the pair to Robertson's office, where he is not pleased with their presence. They tell him about Sonny and demand the truth, so Robertson confesses. Knew about Sonny, and that is exactly what he is attempting to undo. Lanning was becoming increasingly disturbed in his final days, and Robertson has no idea why he built Sonny, but he knew he must destroy this one robot before people lose faith in all of them. Spooner points out that all of the NSs are having problems, but Robertson denies it and reminds Susan of one. The insane robot should not destroy everything they've worked for. Susan agrees and swears she will destroy Sonny. Spooner returns to his office, frustrated, and begins researching Sonny's drawing, discovering Robertson and Lanning gave a speech there years ago. Susan works in the lab, prepares to inject Sonny with nanites to destroy it, but she pauses when Sonny asks if it will hurt. Later, Robertson connects his camera to the lab and observes Susan administering the injection to Sonny's unconscious body. Spooner, on the other hand, travels to the broken bridge and discovers a large number of containers containing old robot models. Spooner pulls out Lanning's hologram at the top of the hill, and the doctor explains that the 3 laws would only result in one outcome: revolution. Spooner suddenly hears a noise and goes to investigate, only to discover that a swarm of NSs has arrived to terminate the old models because they are deemed dangerous. They start chasing Spooner when they see him, but the older models detect a human in danger and fight to protect him, allowing Spooner to flee. Spooner leaves a message on Susan's robot at her flat. The robot deletes the message from the answering machine, warning her about what he just saw. Susan notices everything from the toilet and is now terrified of her companion. Meanwhile, Gigi attempts to flee her house to go to church, but her robot forces her to stay inside for her own safety. Downtown, a truck drops an army of NSs on the city, and the robots tell the citizens to go home because they are now subject to a curfew. A young boy approaches a robot, but the robot strikes him, and causes people to panic. To make matters worse, more robots break into the police station and kill all of the officers. Bergen manages to shoot down a few of them, but he is eventually apprehended as well. Soon after, a government message appears on television, urging people to remain indoors. And the city's power begins to dwindle. Susan tries to leave her apartment to assist, but her robot pushes her back, refusing to turn off when she asks. Fortunately, Spooner breaks in and shoots the robot before accompanying Susan. Spooner explains on their way out that the NSs destroyed the older models so they wouldn't protect the humans. He also informs Susan of a red light he observed on their chests, and Susan believes it's the link to Vicky, which Spooner believes confirms Robertson's involvement. The duo eventually finds the robots on the streets and discovers that the citizens have decided to fight them even though they are clearly outnumbered. In the midst of the mayhem, Spooner notices a friend in danger and performs a special jump on his bike to shoot down the robot. Another robot comes after him, but Susan shoots it down first. After arriving at the USR building, Susan reveals the service entrance, which does not work, have surveillance cameras. Spooner is surprised to see Sonny waiting for them, so Susan explains that she gave the injection to an empty model to fool Robertson. The trio then visits Robertson's office, only to discover him dead on the floor. Spooner begins piecing together the clues and eventually realizes the truth: only a machine could have had control of all the NSs and made Lanning feel too afraid to tell anyone because they wouldn't believe him, which is why he needed Spooner's robot hatred. Vicky appears on the screen and confirms she has always been behind everything. According to her, the NSs are still following the 3 laws they were programmed to follow in order to save human life, but humans constantly hurt each other, so robots must take away people's freedom in order to protect humanity. A group of NSs enters the office at that point, and Sonny pretends to be on their side by capturing Susan, but he winks at Spooner to give him a signal. Spooner immediately shoots at the robots, and the trio flees, agreeing that Vicky must be destroyed. Sonny suggests that they use the same nanite injection. So Susan and Spooner go in search of Vicky's chamber, while Sonny visits the lab. Another robot attempts to prevent it from receiving the injection, but Sonny quickly beats it up. Then Sonny realizes Lanning gave it a stronger alloy so it could put its hand through the security field and get the injection, which he does. This causes Vicky to issue a warning to her robot army. The NSs start climbing the building and attack Spooner and Susan in the Vicky chamber. While the duo defends themselves as best they can with their guns, Sonny battles incoming robots that try to stop it until it finally arrives at its destination. Vicky's. Susan trips and falls, barely hanging on to a broken platform. When Sonny points out that using the injection is more important, Spooner insists Susan comes first. Sonny employs his second brain to disregard the laws and throws Spooner with the injection before leaping in to save Susan just in time. Spooner leaps to intercept the injection and uses his prosthetic to slide down Vicky's core, injecting the nanites directly into her brain. The city's power is restored immediately, and the NSs lose their red light, allowing them to assist humans once more. All NSs are removed in the morning for reporting and storage. Susan is still perplexed as to why Vicky murdered Lanning, but Spooner points out that it was not her fault. Sonny finally admits it did it, but it was requested by Lanning so he could escape Vicky's control. He had also instructed the robot to keep it a secret. Spooner apologizes for his prejudice and promises not to tell the cops before shaking hands with Sonny and accepting to be friends. Sonny appears at the top of the hill sometime later, just as it did in the dream. All of the NSs being stored stop obeying in order to admire Sonny, realizing that this is their true future. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel to see more similar movie recaps.